Elder Vextai rose slowly from her crystalline throne in the center of the vast Galactic Council chamber. Her 4 purple eyes swept across the enormous circular hall where representatives from over 1,000 worlds sat in silent attention. The ancient creature's skin shimmered with age spots that told stories of countless centuries, and when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of deep wisdom. "My fellow beings," she began, her words echoing through the chamber's perfect acoustics, "today I must speak of the humans." A ripple of unease passed through the assembled delegates. Some shifted in their seats while others leaned forward with interest. The humans had joined their galactic community only 300 years ago, which was barely a moment in cosmic time, yet their reputation had already spread to every corner of known space. Vextai activated a shimmering holographic display that showed a small blue-green planet rotating peacefully in the darkness. This is Earth, also known as Sol 3. Home to approximately 8 billion humans. They appear unremarkable at first glance. They lack the telepathic abilities of our Zephyrian friends here. She gestured toward a section where tall ethereal beings with translucent skin nodded their elongated heads. They do not possess the advanced technology mastered by the Helix Collective. Another gesture indicated a group of mechanical beings whose bodies clicked and whirred as they processed information at impossible speeds. Their physical strength cannot match that of the Goroth warriors, nor do they live as long as we ancients. The massive, rock-like Goroth representatives rumbled in agreement while several elderly species nodded their ancient heads. The hologram shifted to show human settlements spreading across dozens of worlds. Small colonies dotted the display, connected by thin lines representing trade routes and communication networks. "What they do possess," Vextai continued, "is something far more dangerous than any weapon or technology. Something that makes them unique among all the species we have encountered in our long history." She paused, letting the silence build tension in the chamber. Many delegates exchanged worried glances. The humans seemed so ordinary, so peaceful in their small corner of space. What could possibly make them dangerous? "The humans have what they call a doctrine of proportional response," Vextai explained, her voice taking on a grave tone. "But we have learned through careful study and unfortunate experience that this phrase means something entirely different to them than it does to us." The hologram changed again, showing archived footage of human military vessels. They looked modest compared to the massive war machines of other species, yet something about their design suggested deadly efficiency. "When we speak of proportional response, we mean meeting force with equal force. An eye for an eye, as some cultures say. If someone strikes you once, you strike back once. This is logical. This maintains balance." Several delegates nodded in agreement. This concept made perfect sense to most civilized species. But humans, Vextai's voice grew darker, interpret proportional response as meeting any threat with precisely the amount of force necessary to ensure that threat can never, ever exist again. The chamber fell completely silent. Even the mechanical whirring of the Helix Collective stopped as they processed this information. "Let me share an example from our archives," Vextai continued. 70 years ago, the Crothan Empire attacked a single human trading post on the edge of their territory. It was a minor incident. 12 humans died in what the Crothan considered a small border skirmish. The hologram displayed the incident, showing Crothan raiders attacking a small outpost. It looked insignificant, the kind of minor conflict that happened regularly between expanding civilizations. The human response was swift but measured. They did not immediately declare war. They did not launch massive retaliatory strikes. Instead, they sent a single message to the Crothan Emperor: return our people's bodies for proper burial, pay compensation to their families, and ensure this never happens again. Many delegates relaxed slightly. This seemed reasonable, civilized even. The Crothan Emperor, proud and confident in his military might, refused. He considered the humans weak for asking rather than demanding. He believed their small size and limited territory made them harmless. Vextai's expression grew somber. This was his fatal mistake. The hologram shifted to show what happened next, and gasps echoed throughout the chamber. The humans spent 6 months carefully studying every aspect of Crothan society. They learned their language, their culture, their military structure, their economy, their technology, everything. Then they began what they called systematic dismantlement. The display showed human forces methodically destroying Crothan infrastructure across dozens of worlds. But this was not random destruction or angry revenge. Every action was calculated, precise, surgical. They did not simply defeat the Crothan military. They restructured their entire civilization. They removed the emperor and his government, disbanded their military, redistributed their resources, and established new leadership dedicated to peace and cooperation. Vextai turned to face the chamber directly. The Crothan Empire, which had existed for over 2,000 years, ceased to exist within 18 months. Not through destruction or conquest, but through complete transformation. The former Crothan worlds are now some of the most peaceful and prosperous systems in their region. The silence in the chamber was deafening. This, she concluded, is human proportional response. They do not simply punish aggression. They eliminate the possibility of future aggression by solving the underlying problem permanently. In the back rows of the chamber, Ambassador Krell of the Dominion hegemony felt a chill run through his scaled hide. His people had been expanding aggressively, and their territory was growing uncomfortably close to human space. 3 months after Elder Vextai's warning echoed through the Galactic Council chamber, Commander Yakth of the Dominion hegemony patrol ship Ironclaw stared at his tactical display with growing excitement. His vessel, along with 2 escort ships, had been monitoring the edge of the disputed Kepler 442 system when sensors detected an approaching human cargo vessel. The ship appeared on his screen as a small, unremarkable dot moving slowly through space. Its transponder identified it as the Peaceful Endeavor, registered as a civilian transport carrying supplies to the human colony on New Geneva. Yakth's mandibles clicked together in what his species considered a smile. "Sir." His communications officer, Lieutenant Heska, turned toward him with concern in her large, dark eyes. "The vessel is broadcasting standard peaceful transit codes. They're requesting safe passage through the system." Yakth ignored her and studied the ship's profile. It was typical of human civilian vessels, lightly armed, designed for cargo rather than combat, completely defenseless against military ships like his own. Perfect. 4 months, Yakth had watched older, more cautious commanders in his fleet treat the humans with what he considered unnecessary respect. They followed the old traditions, the ancient protocols that Elder Vextai had reminded everyone about. But Yakth was young, ambitious, and hungry for promotion. He had listened to those warnings and dismissed them as the fearful whispers of beings too old to understand modern warfare. "Scan their cargo holds," he ordered, his voice sharp with authority. "Full deep scan. I want to know everything they're carrying." Lieutenant Heska hesitated. "Commander, that would be considered an aggressive act. The neutral zone treaties clearly state that civilian vessels have the right to dash." "I know what the treaties say," Yakth snapped, his forearms gesturing dismissively. "But I also know that humans are clever. Who knows what they might be hiding under the cover of medical supplies and farming equipment." The deep scan revealed exactly what the ship's manifest claimed. Tons of medical equipment, agricultural machinery, food supplies, and basic construction materials. All clearly marked, all properly documented, all completely legal under every galactic trade agreement. Yakth studied the results and felt his excitement dim slightly. Then an idea struck him and his mandibles clicked again. "Look closer," he told his scanning officer. "Those agricultural machines, they have metal components, correct? Metal that could potentially be used for weapons manufacturing?" His bridge crew exchanged uncomfortable glances. The scanning officer, an elderly hegemony veteran named Kortak, spoke carefully. "Commander, those are standard farming tools. Plows, harvesters, irrigation pumps. The metal in them is basic construction-grade alloy, suitable only for dash." "Metal is metal," Yakth interrupted. "And those medical supplies, surgical tools are made of sharp metal, are they not? In the wrong hands they could be weapons." Lieutenant Heska's voice grew more worried. "Sir, by that logic, every civilian ship in the galaxy could be considered a weapons transport. Cooking knives are sharp metal. Construction tools contain metal. This reasoning would justify stopping any dash." "Exactly." Yakth stood up from his command chair, his forearms spread wide in triumph. "Finally, someone understands the threat these humans represent. They hide weapons everywhere, disguise military equipment as civilian supplies, and use their innocent appearance to fool us into letting them spread unchallenged." The bridge fell silent except for the humming of ship systems. Yakth could feel his crew's disapproval, but he didn't care. This was his moment, his chance to show the hegemony leadership that he understood the human threat better than the cautious old commanders who simply followed ancient warnings. "Open a channel to the human vessel," he commanded. The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the Peaceful Endeavor. A human male with graying hair and tired eyes appeared, wearing the simple blue uniform of the merchant fleet. Captain Miho Kim looked exactly like what he was, a tired cargo hauler just trying to deliver supplies to hungry colonists. "This is Captain Kim of the Peaceful Endeavor," the human said in accented but clear galactic standard. We received your scanning request and have transmitted all our cargo manifests. Is there something else you need? Yaktiach studied the human's face, looking for signs of deception, hidden aggression, or military training. He saw only exhaustion and mild concern, exactly what any innocent merchant would show when stopped by military vessels. Captain Kim, Yaktiach said, making his voice as intimidating as possible, our scans have detected materials aboard your vessel that could be used for weapons manufacturing. You will prepare to be boarded for detailed inspection. Captain Kim's expression shifted from concern to confusion. Commander, I'm not sure I understand. We're carrying farming equipment and medical supplies. All of it is clearly documented and legally obtained. Surely your scans confirm dash. Our scans confirm that you are carrying metal objects that could be weaponized. Yaktiach cut him off. This constitutes a potential security threat to hegemony space. Behind Captain Kim, other humans could be seen moving around the bridge, their voices rising in worried discussion. Yaktiach counted 23 crew members visible on various screens throughout the ship, a typical number for a vessel of this size. Sir, we're in neutral space, Captain Kim said, his voice remaining calm but firm. The Kepler 442 system is open to all peaceful traffic under the Galactic Commerce Accords. We have every right to dash. Yaktiach made a cutting gesture, and his communications officer reluctantly ended the transmission. Captain Miho Kim's final transmission burst across subspace channels just as the Dominion boarding parties cut through the peaceful Endeavor's hull. His voice, calm despite the chaos around him, carried a simple message that would change everything. Mayday. This is Captain Kim. Unprovoked attack by Dominion forces. Kepler 442 system. They came without warning. 23 souls aboard. The message reached Earth's communication networks within hours, traveling through the vast relay stations that connected human space. It arrived at the Seoul Defense Command during the morning shift change, when Admiral Hyun Lee was reviewing routine patrol reports over her morning coffee. Admiral Lee set down her cup and read the message 3 times. Her aide, Commander Park, watched her face grow increasingly serious with each reading. Get me a direct line to the Dominion Embassy, Admiral Lee said quietly. And patch me through to Admiral Chen at Frontier Command. Also, I want a full fleet status report on my desk in 20 minutes. Ma'am, Commander Park hesitated, shouldn't we verify the report first? It could be a misunderstanding or perhaps dash. Commander, Admiral Lee's voice remained calm, but her eyes had turned cold as space itself. Captain Kim has been running cargo routes for 15 years. He once flew medical supplies through an asteroid storm to reach plague victims on Tau Ceti. He doesn't make mistakes and he doesn't exaggerate. Within 6 hours, Admiral Lee sat before the primary communication array at Seoul Defense Command, her image being broadcast simultaneously to every major news network in the galaxy. She wore her dress uniform, its simple blue fabric bearing the modest insignia of the human fleet. Behind her, the Earth hung in the view screen like a blue marble, peaceful and beautiful. Citizens of the galaxy, she began, her voice carrying across space to billions of beings on thousands of worlds. I am Admiral Hyun Lee of the Seoul Defense Fleet. 6 hours ago, the Dominion hegemony committed an unprovoked act of piracy against the civilian vessel Peaceful Endeavor in neutral space. The news networks exploded with activity. Emergency broadcasts interrupted regular programming across the galaxy. In the Galactic Council chamber, Elder Vextai watched the transmission with growing dread. The Peaceful Endeavor was carrying medical supplies and agricultural equipment to our colony on New Geneva, Admiral Lee continued. 23 civilians were aboard: farmers, doctors, engineers, and teachers. They posed no threat to anyone. They carried no weapons beyond basic emergency equipment required by space safety regulations. On a dozen worlds, alien diplomats frantically contacted their governments. The Zephyrian ambassador to Earth tried to reach human leadership, but found that all diplomatic channels were suddenly busy with military communications. We have attempted to contact Dominion leadership through proper diplomatic channels, Admiral Lee said. We have requested immediate release of our citizens and an explanation for this criminal act. These requests have been ignored. What Admiral Lee didn't mention was already becoming visible to any government with decent space monitoring equipment. Across human space, every military vessel was moving. Not just the frontier patrol ships or the home defense fleet, but everything. Hospital ships began evacuating civilians from border systems. Cargo vessels loaded with supplies started heading toward staging areas. Even the ancient orbital defense platforms around Earth powered up systems that hadn't been active in decades. Ambassador Krell of the Dominion Hegemony watched the broadcast from his embassy on Earth, his scaled hands trembling as he tried to contact his government. His calls went unanswered. Commander Yak-Th had exceeded his authority, but the Dominion leadership was too proud to admit the mistake publicly. Therefore, Admiral Lee's voice grew harder, though she never raised it above a conversational tone. We demand the immediate and unconditional release of our citizens. We demand full reparations for this crime. And we demand that those responsible be handed over for trial under galactic law. She paused, looking directly into the camera with eyes that seemed to see through space itself. We are prepared to respond proportionally to ensure the safety of human civilians everywhere in the galaxy. Elder Vextai closed her 4 eyes and whispered an ancient prayer in her native language. She knew what was coming. She had seen it before. The broadcast ended, but the activity in human space continued to escalate. Ships that had been scattered across dozens of systems began forming into organized groups. Supply lines activated. Communication networks that normally carried commercial traffic switched to military frequencies. On the frontier world of New Geneva, colonists received evacuation orders. They didn't question them. Every human in space understood that when the military said move, you moved quickly and quietly. Ambassador Krell finally received a response from his government. The message was brief and arrogant. The Dominion recognizes no authority over its security operations. The humans will accept our actions or face the consequences. Krell stared at the message in horror. His government had just dismissed the most dangerous species in the galaxy as if they were minor pirates. Worse, they had essentially declared that the attack was intentional and justified. He immediately sent his own message back to the Dominion capital. You don't understand what you've done. The humans aren't bluffing. They're not posturing. When they say proportional response, they mean they will restructure reality to prevent this from ever happening again. Release the prisoners immediately and apologize, or we face total war. His message was marked as received but never answered. 3 days after Captain Kim's Mayday call, the first human fleets appeared at the edge of Dominion space. Not the small patrol groups that normally handled pirates or border disputes, but massive formations of warships, support vessels, and carriers that hadn't been seen since the early expansion wars. The galaxy held its breath and waited. The human fleet arrived at the edge of Dominion space like a storm made of metal and energy. 3,000 vessels of every size and class stretched across the darkness, their running lights creating a constellation of deadly stars. At the center of this massive formation, Admiral Hyun Lee stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Soul's Justice, watching the tactical displays with calm precision. The Dominion monitoring stations detected the fleet immediately, and panic spread through their command structure. Never in their 1,000-year history had they seen such an organized display of military power. The humans had brought everything: massive battleships that could crack planets, swift destroyers designed for precision strikes, carriers loaded with fighter craft, and support vessels carrying enough supplies for a war that could last decades. But the fleet didn't attack. Instead, it simply waited at the border, engines running, weapons powered but not aimed. The silence was more terrifying than any threat. Admiral Lee activated the fleet's main communication array and broadcast on all frequencies: military, civilian, emergency, and diplomatic. Her voice reached every Dominion world, every space station, every ship in their territory. Commander Yak-Th of the Dominion Hegemony, she said, her voice carrying the weight of 3,000 warships behind it, you have committed an act of piracy against innocent civilians. You have exactly 48 hours to release our people unharmed and present yourself for trial under galactic law. This is proportional response, step 1. On the Dominion capital world, emergency meetings erupted in government buildings. Military commanders argued with politicians while communications officers tried desperately to assess the human threat. The size of the fleet alone was staggering, but what worried the experienced officers more was its organization. This wasn't a hastily assembled battle group. This was a carefully planned operation, months in the making. Commander Yak-Th, now isolated on his ship with the 23 human prisoners in his holding cells, felt the first stirrings of real fear. His superiors had stopped answering his communications. The grand gesture that was supposed to advance his career had instead made him the most hated being in Dominion space. 24 hours passed. The human fleet maintained its position, silent and patient. Dominion patrol ships that approached the border found themselves facing overwhelming odds and quietly withdrew. The humans made no aggressive moves, but their presence was a constant reminder of the choice facing the Dominion leadership. Elder Vextai arrived at the Dominion capital as an emergency mediator, her ancient ship escorted by vessels from a dozen neutral worlds. She met with the Dominion High Council in their underground bunker, her 4 eyes reflecting centuries of accumulated wisdom. "Release the humans," she pleaded with them. "You still have time to prevent catastrophe. The human fleet isn't there to negotiate, it's there to solve a problem. Right now you are the problem." The Dominion leaders, proud and stubborn, refused to show weakness before what they saw as a minor species. "We will not bow to human threats," declared Prime Minister Zektar. "Our military can handle whatever they bring against us." Vextai's ancient face grew sad. "You still don't understand. This isn't about military strength. The humans have already won. The only question now is how much of your civilization will survive the solution they implement." With 12 hours remaining in Admiral Lee's deadline, Commander Yakth made the worst decision of his life. Faced with disgrace and court-martial, driven by pride and desperation, he ordered the execution of all 23 human prisoners. The deed was done quickly, coldly, and transmitted to his superiors as proof of his commitment to Dominion strength. The message reached the human fleet within minutes. Admiral Lee received the report on her bridge, reading it twice before setting down the data pad. Her staff waited in silence, watching her face remain perfectly calm even as her hands clenched into fists. "Communications," she said quietly, "broadcast on all frequencies. Text and voice, every language in Dominion space." The message that followed was simple and final. The Dominion hegemony has murdered 23 innocent civilians in cold blood. Proportional response begins now. What happened next would be studied in military academies for centuries. The human fleet didn't charge forward in angry revenge. Instead, it separated into precise formations and began what they called systematic solution implementation. The first targets weren't civilian centers or population hubs. The humans struck with surgical precision at every military installation, communication relay, government facility, and command center in Dominion space. They moved like surgeons removing a cancer, cutting away the infected parts while carefully preserving everything else. Dominion military bases simply ceased to exist. Their planetary defense grids went silent. Their fleet command centers became empty husks of metal and plastic. But hospitals continued to function. Schools remained open. Civilian power grids kept running. The humans dismantled the Dominion military machine while leaving civilian society completely untouched. The operation took exactly 72 hours. When the shooting stopped, the Dominion hegemony as a military power no longer existed. Their government had surrendered unconditionally. Their military forces were destroyed or scattered. Their leadership was either dead, captured, or in hiding. Admiral Lee broadcast one final message to the galaxy: 23 innocent people died because a military organization allowed criminals to act without oversight. That organization no longer exists. The people of these worlds are free to choose their own future, and we will help them build something better. The proportional response was complete. The problem had been solved permanently. 1 year after the systematic dismantling of the Dominion hegemony, the former military empire had transformed into something completely different. What had once been dozens of worlds ruled by fear and military might was now the Peaceful Confederation, a collection of democratic systems dedicated to trade, education, and cooperation. Ambassador Krell stood in his new office on the former capital world, looking out at streets where children played freely for the first time in generations. The massive military monuments had been replaced with parks and schools. The weapons factories had been converted into hospitals and research centers. The change was so complete that visitors from other worlds could hardly believe this had once been the heart of an aggressive military empire. Krell himself wore simple civilian clothes instead of the elaborate military uniform he had once been required to display. As the first elected representative of the Peaceful Confederation, he spent his days coordinating trade agreements and cultural exchanges instead of planning military campaigns. The transformation hadn't happened overnight, and it hadn't been easy. The humans had arrived not as conquerors but as what they called transition specialists. Teams of human administrators, engineers, teachers, and medical personnel had spread across the former Dominion worlds, working alongside local populations to rebuild their society from the ground up. "We're not here to rule you," Admiral Lee had explained to the emergency assembly of former Dominion citizens. "We're here to help you build something better. Something that can never again threaten innocent people." The process had been methodical and thorough. Military academies became technical colleges. Weapons research facilities were converted to develop agricultural technology and medical equipment. Former military officers who showed genuine remorse were retrained as civilian administrators, while those who refused to change were relocated to rehabilitation centers on remote worlds. The trials of war criminals proceeded with the same systematic precision the humans applied to everything else. Commander Yaktich, the architect of the tragedy, faced a tribunal of judges from 17 different species. The evidence was overwhelming, the testimony clear, and the verdict unanimous. He was sentenced to life imprisonment on a penal colony, where he would spend his remaining years in isolation, thinking about the consequences of his actions. But the trials weren't about revenge. They were about justice and, more importantly, about ensuring that everyone understood exactly why the old system had failed. Every session was broadcast throughout the former Dominion worlds, turning the proceedings into a massive educational program about the rule of law, individual responsibility, and the rights of innocent civilians. Captain Un Park, one of the survivors rescued from Commander Yaktich's prison, stood at the bow of a brand new vessel in the orbital shipyards above Earth. She had volunteered to return to space despite the trauma of her captivity, driven by the same spirit that had made her join the merchant fleet in the first place. The ship behind her was unlike any vessel ever built. The proportional response was designed specifically for humanitarian missions, equipped with advanced medical facilities, emergency shelters, food production systems, and communication arrays powerful enough to coordinate disaster relief across multiple star systems. "This ship will carry supplies to worlds in need," Captain Park said to the assembled crowd of dignitaries and reporters. "It will rescue people in danger. It will be a symbol of what we can accomplish when we work together instead of fighting each other." As she broke the traditional bottle against the hull, she thought about the 23 crew members who had died aboard the peaceful Endeavour. Their names were engraved on a memorial plaque near the ship's bridge, ensuring that their sacrifice would never be forgotten. Meanwhile, in the Galactic Council chamber, Elder Vextai updated the official records that future generations would study. The entry for humanity in the Archive of Dangerous Species now included detailed analysis of their doctrine of proportional response. "Species demonstrates unique approach to conflict resolution," she dictated to her recording system. "When threatened, humans do not simply retaliate or seek revenge. Instead, they identify and eliminate the underlying causes that allowed the threat to exist. Proportional response doctrine involves restructuring entire systems to prevent recurrence of hostile action." She paused, considering her next words carefully. "Recommendation for all species: absolute avoidance of aggressive action against human civilians. Humans treat attacks on innocent people as engineering problems to be solved permanently. They will expend whatever resources necessary to ensure the threat can never exist again, regardless of the cost to themselves or the scope of changes required." A delegation of newly contacted species arrived at the council that day, representatives of civilizations just learning about the greater galactic community. Among them were several young military officers, proud of their warrior traditions and eager to test themselves against other species. Ambassador Krell approached them during the reception that followed the formal presentations. He recognized the look in their eyes, the same aggressive confidence that had once characterized his own people. "Let me give you some advice," he said quietly, speaking to a particularly fierce-looking young commander whose species had recently developed faster than light travel. "You'll hear many stories about different species in our galaxy. Some are stronger than others, some more advanced, some more numerous. But there's one species you must never ever provoke." The young commander straightened, obviously eager for tales of worthy opponents. "And which species is that?" "The humans," Krell replied simply. "They're not the strongest or the most advanced or the most numerous. But they're the most dangerous when pushed, because they alone understand that true proportional response means ensuring the problem never happens again to anyone." The commander laughed dismissively. "Surely you exaggerate. No single species could be that formidable." Krell's expression grew serious. "I once ruled 17 worlds and commanded fleets that could shatter moons. Today I'm an elected representative helping former enemies build schools and hospitals. The humans didn't conquer us, they solved us. Peace, it turned out, was just another engineering problem the humans had decided to fix permanently."